Let's talk money.
Hello and welcome to a brand new edition of Let's Talk Money. I'm your host, Surabhi Upadhyay. It is the age-old dilemma. Buy or rent? What is the best route to get to your dream home, your abode? Well, there are several pros and cons on both sides. You have to, of course, take stock of how the property markets are doing in the country, in the city and the country that you're staying in. And then, of course, there is the math and the financial planning aspect to it. And today we are going to be covering all of these issues. I have two guests with me right here in the studios, Ghulam Zia from Knight Frank and Harshvardhan Roongta from Roongta Securities. Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining in. I'm so glad both of you are here because this promises to be a charged up conversation and debate, right? Very close to people's heart. So, okay, in one word, buy or rent?
So, well, I would say, Surabhi, if you can afford, you should, at least the first house that you should have at least one house for yourself. It could be your current occupation, self-occupation, it could be for future self-occupation, or you may just keep it as a last resort, saying that, okay, I have a roof to myself. If everything goes wrong, then at least I have a house, the roti, kapda, makan. So the basic elements, I think one house you should own, and the rest you can be treating it as investment and evaluate pros and cons accordingly.
Fair enough. I can tell you this, that I think I've been speaking to Ghulam for the last 10 years or maybe longer. And I have my own admission to make. Because of my constant conversations with Ghulam, I have not bought a real estate asset till now. Because we talk about the low rental yields, we talk about very high capital values in a city like Bombay, and the prospects of making better returns if you put that money smartly in financial investments. So Ghulam, where do you stand on the buy versus rent argument?
Well, since you asked the answer in one word, my answer is rent.
There we go.
And it hasn't changed in the last 10 years.
So I called you again. Now let's see if the answer is different.
Yes. So one word, rent. Let's go ahead.
No, but seriously, we have to, I'm sure, get into second order, third order sort of implications, issues. What's the starting point? Because he's right, Harsh is right. I mean, for most people, owning a real estate asset is a very emotional, there's an emotional connect to it as well.
That's true. That's true. And, when we are looking at India walking into the next century, etc., we are talking about, high growth economy and so on. So once again, the question is, if I look up to those economies, Europeans and Americans, what is the trend? Majority of them rent. My problem is we are carrying this burden, which is with us for last so many decades, if not ages, that we connect a lot of emotional value to a house. The moment I disconnect that, the moment I plug it out, I look at it as purely as a place where I'm putting my money in, which would be held up for 10, 20, 30 odd years, very bad liquidity. And in a situation like that, if other asset classes are giving me in double digit kind of a return per annum, why would I be stuck with something which is half of that, 5-6%? Yeah. So the logic to me is simple, rent it is.
But what you're saying is important. You're saying 5-6% appreciation. The traditional mindset has been that, you buy a house and over generations, 3-4 decades, I mean, it's supposed to be a significant wealth building asset. So, bust the myth or the reality versus myth. I mean, where do we stand on this? That over 30 years, your house is supposed to treble in value, etc., and therefore create good wealth.
Well, those are very far and few examples I would pick up, because for every such instance that you are highlighting, you may find hundreds on the other side where people have burned their fingers. So typically, this is the tendency that we eulogize the success and don't talk much about failures. But when you look at the weighted average of both sides, you will agree with me that it's not really so rosy a picture to invest in real estate.
That's a very important distinction, and viewers, let's keep that in mind, that the purpose of this conversation today is not to talk about residential housing as an investment. We're talking about buying a house for self-use, whether you stay in that house today or you plan it for the next, say, couple of years down the line where you want to move in that, residential asset. Now on this, Harsh, let's go over the pros and the cons, and how do you start planning to have that one house asset, as you said?
So, Surabhi, again, just to reiterate, investment, in the form of an investment, there are better opportunities to invest your money into. As Ghulam said, I mean, there are financial assets that you can put your money into, which will grow at a much faster rate. What we're talking about right now is that one house that either you're planning to stay in it right now or sometime in the future.
Sure.
Okay, so very clearly, I'm an advocate to that theory to say that have one house of your own, something that you may not be buying in the same city as which you're living in right now, But that has to be a backup for you to say that if everything else goes wrong, I have one roof to myself. I may go and house myself and my family safely into that house. Okay, so that is the theory we're talking about.
Sure.
Now come to the pros and cons. Okay, so mathematically speaking, it will not make any sense. We're not talking numbers. Okay, if you put numbers to this entire discussion, it is I think a given that you have to invest into financial assets. Why? Because if the ticket size of a house is say 1 crore, for example, you can rent that house at probably 2% of that cost annually. So you would say that I put that 1 crore into a bank deposit, earn 6% on it, pay 2% as rent, I still enjoy the same house. Okay, so we're not getting into that debate.
Yeah.
Now purely understand that what is the non-financial factors that you will need to consider for buying that house for yourself. Why do I say so? So one is that it becomes the safety of last resort. Now we're assuming one thing, that we're going to be earning, we're going to be in our careers, we're going to do X, Y, Z, we're going to earn income and pay rent.
Yeah.
Now there could be situations in life where our cash flows get affected because of job loss, because of disability, because of anything else.
Yeah.
Now what if I'm not in a position to pay rent? Then what do I do? So when I have a house of my own, at least I know for sure that I don't need to go anywhere else.
But you'll still be paying the EMI on the house. I mean, if it's not an outright purchase.
So we come to the point of affordability.
Yeah.
So that's where we're saying that you do not extend yourself beyond a certain point. You buy within your affordability, plan it well. So in case of job loss, okay, nothing much can be done. But in case of disability, in case of death, you can have insurances which take care of the liabilities of your loans. So the idea that I'm trying to advocate is very simple. Roti, kapda, makan. I mean, this thing has been in existence for generations.
Forever, yeah.
Right? So I am of that view that buy that one house if you can afford. Okay, I'm again and again underlying this fact where I'm saying that if you can afford, buy one house. You may not want to stay in it today in the city that you're working in, but in some city where it is affordable, where you believe that in future you may go and live.
Okay, so I'll come back to the affordability aspect of it. It's very important because we all might want a dream home, but if it's costing 10 CR overlooking the sea face in Mumbai, I mean, do we really do that? We don't want to burst the bank and completely mess up our financial plan. So back on that in just a bit. But before that, Ghulam, now this buy versus rent argument, does it vary? Does your answer vary depending on which city we're talking about? A city like Mumbai where property values are very high, is it better to rent? Is it better to buy if you're talking about tier 2, tier 3 cities where, maybe houses are more affordable?
Well, it's not just a discussion on affordability because when we are talking about regional variance in the theory of where should I or should I not buy or rent or whatever, the issue is about how this city is treating the population which is coming from different places and setting in. So like today, if I have to give an example, not in India, but the best of the rental yields globally are enjoyed in Middle East, especially Dubai. Because very few people who stay there, the Emiratis who own it, otherwise almost 70% are the population which is coming from various places, expats, and who are essentially taking in on rent.
Correct.
A few policies have changed where expats can also own. In last 5-6 years, things have changed. But if I talk about, say, for example, Bengaluru, in case of Bengaluru, the requirement of rental housing is so huge. Same is the case with most of these tech-related cities, be it Chennai, Hyderabad, or even Pune. These are places where rental requirement would be far bigger than actual ownership requirement.
Okay.
And that is where, unfortunately, in absence of a organized or a big retail renting platform, it's mostly people like you and I who buy an apartment and give it on rent. So lack of a policy on rental housing has given way to a lot of people buying those houses to then put it on rent.
Sure.
So that is what changes a bit.
Yeah. So simplified. I mean, if we talk about India and say take 2-3 different regions, and again, I'm buying from the home consumer's point of view.
Right.
And the decision to whether go in for that 3 crore or 4 crore property, take that loan, versus like how Harsh said, just rent it at a fraction of the capital value, the cost.
So here again the discussion will go into affordability, which you a short while back said that we will address it slightly later, but then it is all hinging on that. So a city like Mumbai, which is extremely difficult to afford, the choice would ideally be to rent it.
Okay.
In a place like Hyderabad, you can even own it, in spite of a huge inventory available for renting it. because it's within your reach, you can own it. But again, the problem, whether you want to really own it, if you're non-Hyderabadi, you want to own it, all those discussions will come up. But in terms of sheer calculations or Excel sheets, I would say Mumbai, because it's unaffordable a city, it's very difficult. I would rather say if you're in Mumbai, you should only rent it. At least in a place like Delhi, so not Delhi, of course NCR is also turning extremely costly, like Gurgaon, etc. But if you're in Pune or Hyderabad or even Chennai, you have both options, but still I would go back to where I started. Renting is the option.
Okay, all right. So he's a strong proponent of renting.
Indeed.
Very, very clear. But now let's expand on the affordability point, Harsh. Like I said, dream home might be costing 10 CR. Not everybody will have that money. What are the thumb rules? Basic financial planning principles. How do you plan what you can purchase without straining your overall plan?
So from a financial standpoint, you evaluate it in this way that your EMIs should not be more than 50% of your take-home income.
Okay.
So not your CTC. I'm not talking about CTC. I'm talking about whatever net take-home is what you get net in hand. Your EMI should not be more than 50% of that. So then it is within your parameters of affordability. Why? Because if you are going to go beyond that, then there are other responsibilities that get affected. You would have to save for your retirement, you have to save for your children's education, you have to save for many other things. So just ensure that the EMIs do not cross 50% of your net take home.
Okay.
Now you start working backwards. Okay, so you say that if my 50% is equivalent to say 50,000 rupees per month. So your EMI, if it's 50,000, the loan that you're eligible for would be approximately 50 lakhs.
Okay.
So if it's not affordable in the city that you're living in right now because of work reasons, and you believe that there's another city that you might move into later on, and that because that's your purpose, right? Eventually, I'm saying that has to be for self-consumption. So if it's not in the current city of your occupation, it could be another city. There you may want to secure yourself a house. I say this because we've had several cases in our own professional life where we've been advocating that there's no point in buying a property, etc. But when we see non-monetary reasons, like we've had families where the daughter is divorced, for example, and she comes back. Now, where does she afford a rent? So that time you have a house that you can take care of. Some children are not settled yet. So rent essentially comes out of the income that you're generating. With career graphs being so volatile now, I mean, you could be well settled in your career and believe that I'm getting a steady source of income, and suddenly that income goes away.
Yeah.
So when you have a house of your own, at least you're not under the threat of being pushed out of the house because rents are not affordable.
Sure.
So have one house is what I'm saying, but keep in mind the affordability factor, because you cannot go overboard. The moment you go overboard, then everything else gets disturbed. It's like shaking the apple cart.
Yeah.
Then everything else just falls down like domino effect. Your education, children's education, your own retirement, everything falls apart.
Absolutely.
So be within the affordability, know exactly why you're buying. It's not an investment that you're looking at, it's only self-consumption.
And that to make sure your total EMIs, including your home loan and all the other loans, don't exceed 50% of your net take-home income.
And if there are if there are two earning members, then you can collaborate both together. And then
the total net income of the household.
Correct.
Got that point. All right, we'll take a very quick break on that note, but we come back on the other side and then we'll discuss the very important aspects of what all to check before you go ahead and buy that house. I mean, it could be a minefield out there. How do you ensure that you don't make mistakes? Back with that in just a moment.
Let's talk money.
Welcome back. You're with us on Let's Talk Money, and this week it's the buy versus rent debate when it comes to housing and a house for self-use, your dream home. And it's a big debate that's been raging, almost 50-50 in the middle between the buy and the rent. But I think we have consensus on the panel that if it is one home for self-use, for self-security, then you can go ahead, but don't break the bank. That's the most important thing. So speaking of breaking the bank, Ghulam, I have to ask you, I mean, the market's really recovered quite a bit, the real estate residential market in India last 2-3 years, right? Now, give us some sense of the key 4-5 metros. Where are things reaching or going beyond reach? Where is there still that window where you can find something reasonable and affordable?
Well, you spoke about breaking the bank. I was wondering, stealing the bank is what it should be. Because the way things are heating up in a few of these markets, especially say Mumbai, a few of these South Mumbai markets and Gurgaon in NCR. In fact, to my amazement, the highest price growth has been seen in Bengaluru, I thought Bangalore was one of the most affordable markets, but even that, last 3 years have been completely going bonkers. So the concern is that the price appreciation in last 2.5, 3 years, and let's not forget that these 2.5, 3 years, golden 2.5, 3 years from the supply side have come after about a wait of almost about a decade.
Yeah.
So here they want to get maximum out of the situation. So the price rise is going completely berserk right now.
Just give us some sense, say Bengaluru where the price rise is quite sharp, how much is it? Mumbai, most markets, how much is it?
So the highest growth we have seen was in Bengaluru, which is almost about 20% in last 2 years, 2.5 years, because that's where post-COVID, a year of a lull, and then the thing started moving up. So in last 2.5 years, Bengaluru has been breaking all records, about 20+% growth in Bengaluru. NCR and NCR also has been 15+%. Mumbai is 12 to 13%, is still lesser of the lot, but a few of these projects in Mumbai which are under arc lights are the ones where things have gone completely crazy. You know, for the first time in India, we have seen a developer selling for more than 2 lakh rupees a square feet, first time. And while we were just about, you know, looking at that and wondering what's happening, somebody else spoke about 250,000. So this is actually a kind of a rat race going on to see how best you can extract from a willing buyer. So I'm a little worried the way the prices have shot up.
But these would be specific transactions in very niche markets, right? They would not be representative of an overall overheating.
That's true, absolutely right. However, when the guy next door is selling for 200,000 rupees, you cannot sell for 100. You have a pressure to go as close to that number as possible, lest people start believing that something wrong with you if you are still holding on to your price of a lakh. So that's what it is, you know, the peer pressure, I would say, which gets the whole price momentum coming across. But that's a lot to do with location as well. So as I said, most of the very marquee transactions are coming up in Worli Seaface, which is today the billionaires row of late last 2-3 years. It is the most talked about location in the country. But that said, for every Worli Seaface, you would still have places in Panvel or Vasai Virar where, and mind you, something very surprising, when you talk about affordable housing, which is below 50 lakh, would you believe that Mumbai sells maximum number of below 50 lakh apartments compared to all 8 cities? But that's true. Because we have lots of these locations which are suddenly getting connected because of good infrastructure.
Trans-harbour, sea-link,
exactly,
etc.
Exactly. So people are finding options in slightly remote areas which are going to be well connected with the city. So overall, while there's a huge maddening rush to get the prices high, but at the same time, there are new locations coming up which will give you affordable housing also if you are a buyer.
And if you're willing to stay a little far away from the center of the city. Very quickly, Ghulam, so that's an overview of how capital prices are moving. What about rentals? I mean, in the Mumbai market, we know rentals have been going up last couple of years, ever since the COVID low. But in general, Hyderabad, Bengaluru, what's the general scene with rentals and the expectation?
First, the rental value appreciation happened a lot in Bengaluru. Again, demand-supply scenario because a lot of those techies, the tech industry, headquartered in Bengaluru for that matter. So, huge number of jobs created in Bengaluru. So, you require huge rental housing there. And the demand-supply scenario, rent shot up in Bengaluru first. Mumbai, it was more because of the wave of redevelopment. Many of buildings were about to be broken. So all those who are living there suddenly will be out there locating, trying to search for a rental house for 2 years, 3 years or 5, as long as the redevelopment takes. So these are the two cities where rental yields have shot up a lot.
And do you expect them to keep rising?
Not really, you know, because there's a lot of even redevelopment that we're talking about. It's a lot of euphoria created artificially around it. I don't believe the kind of numbers that are floated around that so much of redevelopment of Mumbai is happening is not true the way numbers are talking about. But that said, there is already a stability here. Be it Bengaluru or even Mumbai, the rent growths have been saturating. And the other cities like Hyderabad, Chennai, etc., in any case, the rents were pretty well within the range. So rental yields, if that is a parameter that you have to look at, in case of Bengaluru, it is going upwards of 3.5 odd %, whereas in Mumbai, it is closer to 2%. So it also talks volumes about the demand-supply scenario in these cities.
The mismatch there. Got that point. So it gives us a good overview of you know, both if you want to buy and also if you're renting, what can you expect going forward. Harsh, now let's come to the critical decision. If you've decided to buy that dream home, then what is the checklist like? What all do you need to think? Beyond obvious things like connectivity, etc., but you know, to make sure that you're not getting caught in any kind of a trap.
So one is, of course, you need to see all the approvals that the project has. If you're buying something under construction, you have RERA's website now where all the project related details have been uploaded. So you should do that basic due diligence wherein you will go and check whether the project is approved, plans are approved, what is the progress, who's the ownership, etc. The builder, I mean the developer, I mean you need to see the reputation of the developer, whether they have a reputation of projects being delayed or stalled, or there is going to be, they have a good track record of projects being completed, because you don't want a situation wherein you've paid like 10, 20% or 50% or more than that and you don't have the property in your hand, right? Because the life savings that we're talking about.
Ghulam, on that important checklist, the mistakes and the traps to avoid when you're zoning in on a developer, signing that contract, what to look out for?
I would be wary of getting into, since we are in Mumbai, a redevelopment project where we haven't really seen the building coming down, because a lot of things can change. So redevelopment, you have to be very cautious because it's a very complicated business. You're not getting a free land for developer to come and construct. Lot to worry about. Don't be in a haste to buy an apartment in redevelopment building. If you're getting nearer to completion, perfectly fine. But otherwise, if you have a clean land where a developer and a known developer, the listed players, etc., who are doing a good job, always pay that extra premium because you have a reliability on that developer. RERA, of course, a lot of pains have been sorted, but not all. So RERA still is not a complete solution to the miseries of a buyer. So be cautious. Don't just depend on RERA. You need to do a little more than that. Get a proper legal advice as well. At least in Mumbai, where you're spending 10 crores, you can spend a few lakh to get a good lawyer to advise you. The other cities, of course, if you're buying a 50 lakh to a crore apartment, seeking legal advice is a little of a stretch, but you should try to at least.
Finally, it obviously becomes a lot more easier if there is an existing residential or a real estate asset in the house, which can be sold and then the proceeds be reinvested in buying that dream home. So Ghulam, what are the do's and don'ts, and also, what are the regulatory / tax implication if, you want to sell an existing property and then reinvest that into a new one?
Well, here, if you're hinting at long-term capital gains as a key factor to be considered, now LTCG actually squares off if you are selling an apartment and buying an apartment. But if you're selling a shop, you don't get that benefit to buy an apartment. And then there are a few more complications, like typically, at least in Mumbai, when you are going up the corporate ladder, you would want to sell 2 apartments and buy one because now you want a bigger one, better one, and so on. That is also not available. Only 1-to-1 is what it is. So
one residential house sold for one bought.
Yes. So those complications should be seen. Again, you need to consult your chartered accountant as well while doing that. A lot of complications. And those squaring off against the selling of the old property to buy a new one is pretty simple. But if you don't want to buy another property, then the long-term capital gain, in spite of indexations, etc., can really leave a huge hole in your pocket. So be careful when you're selling an apartment. It should be for some purpose, some reason, not just to keep money at home.
That's and the window of reinvestment, Harsh, is what?
2
I
years.
think you have to reinvest within 2 years.
So if you've sold an apartment today, either you would have bought another apartment 1 year prior to sell of today, so that can be offset, or within 2 years of selling your apartment right now. And if it's under construction, you have the window to 3 years. So that's the basic condition. However, there have been a lot of changes where there are sub conditions. As you know, one apartment can be used for another apartment or not. Then you already, if you're owning 1 or 2 apartments already, and then you're selling one and buying another one, maybe that's not allowed. So I think to go into the sub conditions and clauses, because there's again a 10 crore cap on it. Then there is one deadline. I think it's July 23 that if you bought an apartment before that, indexation is allowed.
The previous budget, when they made it optional, you may choose indexation, not 12.5% without indexation.
So the primary conditions are that you sell today within 2 years or 1 year prior, or 3 years if it's under construction. That's the basic condition. Other than that, if whether you're eligible or not will depend upon a lot of sub conditions, which it's best to check with a tax expert.
Okay, absolutely. I think this has been a very helpful conversation, gentlemen. Thanks very much. There's no straight answer, but I think the answer, like we said, is that if it is a house for self-use, and if your heart is set on it and you're doing your math and your financial planning properly, then maybe it's not a bad decision at all to go in and buy that dream home. Thank you so much for joining in and shining the light on this very, very emotional subject, shall I say. Thanks for joining in. Well, viewers, hopefully you found this conversation useful. Keep sending us your feedback, comments and queries. We'll see you again another time, another theme next week.
Let's Talk Money